another Elden Ring discourse. I can't wait to see that fool's look on his face when the main target is body type, the very thing that has been blacklisted amongst his own peers will finally get a chance to get some recognition. Now, let's see his face when...
Sir, I have some important news for you that might be of importance.
Oracle, can't you see that I'm busy watching my own arch-nemesis about to witness his own destruction?
Great stir, it is of utter importance that the topic of Elden Ring from Playa is not about body types, but rather the 2024 Game Awards. You might want to reconsider your game plan.
What? The Game Awards? What? When did this happen? Oracle, show me everything at once.
Very well. Wait, I'm expecting a transmission from him right now. Do you want to listen to this broadcast?
Yes. I want to hear that worm squirm before I kill him again.
As you wish, my lord. Now deciphering another broadcast from the ScapeROMFiles.
I was originally going to do like a parody rant talking about how Dark Souls 3 is the better Dark Souls game, simply because Dark Souls 3 I think might be the last From Software game ever to have the core established gender selection, which if we ever get a Code Vein sequel, it will probably end up suffering the same fate as the best game of all time, that is Elden Ring, or as a certain established Let's Player has called it, Dark Souls 4. I particularly haven't been too interested in that whole topic, considering that a lot of people would have just sucked the game off anyway, considering that you're not allowed to criticize this game, or at the very least not to take it to the absolute extreme, like Quantum TV did. Even if he had every single point wrong, if he didn't have to go after Actman for Actman calling on his bullshit, it just would have been another review out there that dare disgraces the name that is Hidetaka Miyazaki and co-written by George R.R. Martin, the man who couldn't even finish his own fucking series, that is the Hunger Games, and that Elden Ring is just Dark Souls 4, but with horseback riding and open world mechanics that people seem to not mind because it saved the gaming universe. But as it turns out, there is actually a whole nother reason for me to talk about this game again, despite having buried the hatchet, as I would like to have called it, in the quite frankly unprofessional video that I have made, in which it did get quite a bit of traction, people basically saying that I was in the wrong, which, to be fair, they could assume whatever the fuck they want, but I do find it absolutely hilarious that the current meta of discourse now, within the Elden Ring discourse metagame, is the whole aspect of the game, I'm sorry, not the game, the DLC, Shadow of the Erdtree, being nominated for Game of the Year at the Game Awards 2024. Now, in case I haven't made it clear in my other videos or other streams, in case people even dare bother watching them, or not to call out a certain group of people, but just leaving the words hi and hardly engaging any form of chat, or people just saying, I'll be in and out of the stream, bro, but then don't actually either leave or just actually stay a while and listen. Whatever. Engagement is engagement, I guess, but come on. It's a live stream. You don't have to... Whatever. Not gonna get into that. Not the point. I don't really like the Game Awards. Okay, I used that joke in the last video. It's not gonna be worth it. Whatever. The Game Awards is a fucking joke, okay? If you've seen any of Synthetic Man's videos, which I highly doubt because people don't care about actual talent on YouTube, even if not everything he says is correct, but is at least a lot more honest and a little truthful in some regards. I think he handled the Fallout TV show a little bit better, even if he was absolutely correct on a lot of the shit. But I'll digress. Or that him saying that Doom 3 is a worse version of Dead Space, even though one came out way before the other, but I'm not going to really get into that. Yeah, the Game Awards is a fucking joke, okay? I have no idea why people think that they're like the greatest thing ever. And yes, I know that E3 died or whatever, but there's going to be like a bunch of other Game Awards. And I think the Game Awards is one of the bigger ones, with whoever the big cheese is following it now. I honestly don't even care, but I know for a fact that they posted the games that are going to be part of the listed Game of the Year awards, and one of those games that's included is literally DLC that's not standalone, which is of course Shadow of the Erdtree, which is $40 USD, requires the base game of Elden Ring, and is undoubtedly, not even just me being subjective, From Software's biggest DLC package in any of the games to date. Now, that's not to say that Shadow of the Erdtree may have a lot of things that are good going for it, if you're into fucking bondage and submission, or you just hate yourself, or you're fucking sadomasochistic, narcissistic, ass-kissing piece of shit. Or if you just really like wasting money on developer complacency. I don't really fucking know. I mean, I've watched Synthetic Man's video on it. Both videos, actually, and he made a lot of good points. It's a shame DW Terminator won't be talking about it, but I know that I've seen his video, and he does some pretty damn good work in his videos. Even if I don't agree with every single point that he makes, but, you know, at least he has a ground to stand on, and while you could argue that I might not have a ground to stand on, I do know this. People who are actually saying that this game does not deserve Game of the Year, but also have been simultaneously sucking the game's dick to the point that if any legitimate criticism, whether it comes from people who have played the game or otherwise, have absolutely no fucking room to talk about this game not being given an already pointless prestige, especially after the fact that the Game Awards posted a tweet on the XCOM mentioning that they had to take some liberties to guarantee that Elden Ring's Shadow of the Erdtree DLC would be allowed.
I was expecting something different in Elden Ring, and quite frankly, this game is actually Dark Souls 4.
As much as I despise Doom Eternal with every fiber of my goddamn being, I can't say that the Ancient Gods is DLC, as it is standalone. As in, you can choose to play it without buying Doom Eternal, which is kind of insane. There might be other games that have done this before, but I'm pretty sure the last game I can think of within memory that has been remotely successful that lets you do that sort of thing is The Last of Us. And the less said about Left Behind, the better. We leave that shit behind for a reason. I feel absolutely no sympathy or pity for anyone that's going to say that this game should not be nominated for Game of the Year, while also praising the game and getting mad at people like myself for daring to call out on Miyazaki and Martin's works that is Elden Ring, okay? You could probably say that my points on the game have not been holding any water as I didn't play the game. Well, I'm sorry. I refuse to play trash and recycled content that is taken literally from 1.5 decade old game at this point. I know that Dark Souls 1 turned 10 years old a couple of years ago, but I know that Demon Souls is going to catch up. And I know for a fact that there have been shit in these games that have been recycled ever since that 2008 game. It does not excuse the actual jank that comes with these games that have never been fixed. And I don't want to hear that if it ain't broke, don't fucking fix it. People take this shit to the little extreme, and that they'll just expect the game to be exactly like the original, and it's just fine. I have no idea why people are against the game that they even claimed was the best game of the year to not be allowed to get the prestigious title simply because it's DLC. But people acted like this isn't just a DLC, it's a whole new experience, even though you need the base game to play it. And if anything to go by from software, you probably have to get pretty far into the game in order to even access the DLC. It could be as generous as, say, with Dark Souls 3, with only needing to beat the Crystal Sage, which isn't really that far into the game. Maybe one boss beforehand at worst, with being Vort. And if you're really good at the game and have the second DLC, you can go straight to it after beating the, quite frankly, obnoxious free-phase boss fight that is Sister Fried. Legit, the only good thing about that boss fight is the run back. Everything else is fucking terrible. The awful fight, the awful hitboxes, the fact that the game wants to turn into fucking Devil May Cry but has the same lagging ass controls from 2008, and not to mention that not even the summon for Gale works consistently compared to the others. He essentially acts as a NPC of sorts and not a true phantom. It's kind of hard to explain in words, but he just doesn't work like any other phantom in the game. It's obnoxious as fuck. And not to mention that Dark Souls does not need to inherit things that other action games have done well, and by having multi-phase staged boss fights. As much as they can't stand Gale, at least it's just one health bar. If they want to introduce different phases within the one health bar, like a lot of older games and even current ones, fine. It's not a new concept that bosses will gain new moves when the health reaches a certain threshold. Fine, whatever. But Dark Souls was never meant to have that type of combat, and the fact that people defend their shit with Elden Ring, in addition to how many fucking bosses it recycles, is absolutely insane. Elden Ring needs these many boss fights, dude. Yeah, you're fucking retarded. All of you. And I'm sick of you trying to act like you are a person working at From Software, knows what's best for the company, that you're going to keep giving money to every time they make something that is just Souls. Hell, even people were basically gaslighting each other thinking that Armored Core 6 was going to be a Souls-like, which it wasn't. I could play Dark Souls 3 and get most of the same experience. The only thing I won't really get is horseback riding, the ability to jump, and of course the open world gameplay that people behemothly violent profusely whenever a game has a sandbox, but when Elden Ring does it, it's like they discovered bread for the first time after having their memory wiped like in Men in Black. These people who will White Knight Elden Ring, worse than me anti-White Knight with Elden Ring, but yet they want to go on their high horses about how the game just doesn't need to be Game of the Year. Well, what the fuck should be Game of the Year? What, Astrobot? The game that people are okay with despite being a PS5 exclusive? You have Black Myth Wukong, another fucking Souls-like. You have Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which is essentially a remake of an old game, so I kinda don't give a shit. Metaphor, whatever the fuck. It's probably the only game that's really deserving of it, as it's a new IP, even if it is made by a company who people don't like, I guess, sometimes, depending on what mood they're in. And another game which I never even heard of. I was today years old when I've seen this one game appear on my fucking screen. It's absolutely ridiculous. Could have probably replaced that with Silent Hill 2 Remake, considering that everyone is now pulling a 180 and saying the game is fine, even though it kind of crossed the line when you just now jump on the bandwagon of liking a remake of a game and then acting like you were there when the game came out originally. That's just fucking disrespectful, okay? But I'm not going to get into the whole Silent Hill 2 thing. I already did a while ago. I stand everything said by it, and I'm glad the reception to that shit was good, because it's nice to have people actually agreeing, even if it's not for ass-pat reasons. It's just, I'd like to be right on something. And I know I'm going to be right on this by people saying that this game doesn't deserve Game of the Year because it's DLC, but you're also going to act like this game, despite being DLC, may as well be a new game. You can't have your cake and eat it too, you know. This game It's just Dark Souls 4. And the DLC, regardless of how big it is still fucking overpriced. And the fact that people were arguing against a DSP of all people about it is fucking retarded. $40 for a DLC that's more or less the same shit as the 4 has got to be some of the most notorious practices I think I've ever seen in a video game. Hell, what about the other DLCs that From Software has made? Whether it be Artorias of the Abyss, where you literally don't even get access to the DLC until literally midway through the game, and they don't even tell you how to get to the DLC, which I think is absolutely retarded. And the fact that people actually are so dick-strokingly creative to the point that they want to defend a DLC which came in access right away just goes to show how much fucking coke these elitists will snort just so that they can have their right to say that other companies should follow suit. So that you can make DLC that's not so readily accessible, even though you paid money for a product. Can you imagine the actual outcry people who paid money for a DLC but have absolutely no clue as to how to get to it? Dark Souls 2 kind of did something similar, or at least, I guess when the DLCs came out initially, one of the messages in Majula kind of gave you a vague clue, and then reading the item descriptions, because of fucking course you have to, kind of tells you what area you have to go to. But even with Dark Souls 2 to begin with, at least the original, you can kind of access them whenever, provided you beat the boss that's associated to it. But then in Skull of the First Sin, they made it so that you had to find the rings, but they were still in the game world, it's just they weren't given to you from the get-go. So whichever one you think is better is up to you. And of course, let's talk about Bloodborne, because, well, that game's DLC travesty was certainly quite an amazing feat. The only From Software game to actually have trophies tied to the DLC, and no, I'm not counting Dark Souls 2 Skull of the First Sin, as they just made the requirements that you have to get the spells from the DLCs instead of just the base game, but that doesn't really change much. And with Dark Souls 1 not even having DLCs, even people like Seth from 17 saying that From Software were breaking the law, not even kidding, breaking the law by From Software not giving you achievements for the greatest DLC of all time, that is Artorias of the Abyss. You can argue the same thing with Dark Souls 3, but both of its DLCs are way too short, and the only thing memorable about them that most people seem to recall are the bosses. When even people like Democracy or whoever will just say that the entire areas that is in the boss fights are trash. Kinda sounds like a Call of Duty game with a mediocre campaign and a great multiplayer. If only a third of the game is good, that still means the game is not very good, I'm sorry. And especially if you can't even play against bots, and the only way to get consistent enjoyment of the game is to play with randoms or friends, and only one of those is consistent. And that's if the online servers even work, if you get what I mean. There was another ordeal with Bloodborne's DLC being completely broken to the point that non-players could have access to it, but then having a legitimate game-breaking bug where you couldn't even get drops from one of the creatures who dropped the best blood gems that weren't tied to the Chalice dungeons. Imagine if other companies started doing that shit. People would be pissed. I thought people liked the game. I guess they don't. So if you're one of those people that says that Elden Ring should not be given Game of the Year, well, congratulations, you're a fucking idiot. I say it should be given Game of the Year, personally, just because you fucking cocksuckers won't shut the fuck up about it and say that it's the best goddamn video game of all time. But remember, gaming is also simultaneously dying, and the only people who can save it is Hidetaka Miyazaki and George R.R. Martin. I'd rather play a good Souls-like. A game that people neglected for so many fucking years, only for now it to be realized again, simply because everything else is considered DEI, woke, whatever the fuck. I don't know. I guess I didn't use my own words, because I'm Krabakat, apparently. And to that end, you can go fuck yourselves. Give Elden Ring Game of the Year, or you're a fucking idiot. Hey, actually having a viewer this entire time, what the fuck? BH. Something tells me this is not going to be the end of Elden Ring discourse. Now, if you excuse me, I'm gonna go play anything besides Elden Ring. I'm gonna go play some...
Before creation comes destruction.